And one of the things also in terms of vaccinations, because I think we, as the general public, learned a lot over COVID. Um, and ultimately, I think it has led, especially younger people. I've been so encouraged to see so many younger people and younger couples and younger families really begin to ask questions about vaccines or even big pharma. And so that was one of the things that we did. Started really reading about what's in these vaccines. I was shocked to learn that these vaccines oftentimes are filled with mercury and aluminum, or how you say in England,
Aluminium.
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 They're like
Yeah.
loaded with these things. But it struck me because during pregnancy they tell you not to eat fish, or at least limit your fish intake, especially like fishy fish like salmon, because they're high in mercury. But we're going to give babies vaccines that have super high levels of mercury. And there's this huge shift in society to use deodorant that doesn't have aluminum in it.
Yeah.
But we're going to give babies vaccines with 300 times the amount of the FDA recommended amount of aluminum to ingest or put in our bodies. It didn't make sense to me. And so, in terms of vaccinations, we did nothing. That is not to say that we are anti-vax. It's not to say that maybe we won't later down the road for other vaccinations. But I think it's more so just asking the questions, getting information from a totally unbiased source. We had multiple books that we read that I really appreciated. One of them was the Vaccine Friendly Plan. One of them was the Vax Facts. These were fantastic resources for us. But it didn't make sense to give a baby, an infant, a newborn who is merely minutes old at this point, vaccines. Especially things like Hep B, which would require the mother to have Hep B, which I didn't, I still don't. So why would she then get a vaccine for that? We did give her the vitamin K shot. It is not a vaccine, but it helps with blood clotting and things like that. But we asked for the preservative-free vitamin K shot, which hospitals have and you can ask for, which I think then begs the question, why do they even have a vitamin K shot that has preservatives when they have a preservative-free option? So that's what we did in terms of vaccines and the resources that we use to come to those conclusions.
And we looked at what they do in England. So I was trying to figure out, like, I didn't know what I had growing up and stuff. But in England, they wait until you're 6 weeks old before they give you anything. And I think part of it is because in England, everything's paid for by the NHS. It doesn't cost people anything. I think they look at it a little more, they cut out the fat and say, okay, what do we need because it's actually costing the government money now? What do we have to give them?
Interesting.
What's not, what's the fluffy stuff that we can give it and make some money on it, or I think so that was one thing that we looked at was,
And compare that to here,
yeah,
where they're charging insurance companies, or if you have to pay out of pocket, which it would be ridiculous to have a baby in the U.S. And have to pay for that out of pocket. The amount of money that a delivery, a birth cost, having a human is insane. But yeah, you compare that to where Big Pharma knows, oh, well, we can make some money here. It's very different to the NHS.
I didn't know that. Yeah, that again, it's very telling. I'm not at all surprised at the amount of research and homework that you did with this. And I admire you so much. And it's, I try not to beat myself up because 20 plus years ago, we just weren't
totally different.
educated.
Yeah.
Internet was different, et cetera. But I trusted everything my doctors said, everything. And I think I got lucky. I had some good doctors along the way, but also got lucky that there were no ill effects on my kids because I pretty much said, oh yeah, if that's what you're telling me, absolutely yes. And that's the problem with what happened 5 years ago with COVID is now, okay, we lost trust completely. We know that we should never, ever trust again. And therefore, it is our responsibility as mothers and fathers to go take that deep dive and do the research so you know what is best for your baby and what your priorities are.
And I was just going to say, it's sad because we lost trust in a lot of institutions, not even just the medical field or the medical realm or our healthcare providers, like even in terms of our government, like there's not a lot of trust there. And that's a sad thing because you want to believe that regardless of which party, regardless of who is president, that they have your best interests at heart. Those authority figures, even in academia, like those are the people who are qualified or at least I mean,
On paper.
on paper,
Yeah.
qualified to be providing you your education, but that's not what's happening anymore. And so I think with the transparency of the media that we have seen, especially social media over the past few years, I mean, certainly, it's allowed us to start to question lots of different realms and factions of society, which I think, again, you don't want to do. Who wants to be, doing all the things that we're doing, traveling around, but still open up a book and read about vaccines? Like, that's not what I wanted to be doing.
Right.
But I recognize, we both did, we recognized it as something that was necessary to ensure the best that we can as parents, our daughter's safety and her health and her wellness and her well-being.
And it was hard to find information about all this stuff. Like doing
Really?
research, it wasn't readily available. Like if you do like a Google search for it, it doesn't just throw all this information at you, which makes it hard to, where do you look? How do you find it? Where do we get this information from? It wasn't as easy as we thought it was going to be.
Which that doesn't surprise me either, I guess,
Right.
because they don't want us to know all of these things
No.
because it's tied to big pharma, and then they would lose
Yeah.
money if we decide to not get more. Like you go down that rabbit
And they
hole.
all work
Yeah.
together too. Like Google works with big pharma.
Totally.
Like it's not like this big
Yeah,
conspiracy.
look
like
at all
it's
the COVID
proven.
stuff, right?
Right?
I mean,
Yes.
it's coming out that they were, especially like things like Facebook, they were all
Yes.
they were censoring stuff. So, yeah, it wasn't as easy as it probably should be to just get facts about everything and just information, because the other side of it was, I think there's two extremes right now. There's the 10th COVID booster end of the spectrum, and then there's the absolutely zero vax end of the spectrum. And we're neither of them, and I think a lot of everyday people aren't that binary one end of the spectrum. So it was hard to kind of just give me the information about
Let
it.
us decide.
And that you decide.
And that was what those books had. It was relatively unopinionated. It was like, look, here's what it is. Here's the information.
Did you
Make a
get
decision.
any pushback from doctors?
I will say, being here in Tennessee, we were very blessed to have a fantastic doctor. He was willing to work with what we wanted. He had his recommendations and he had his guidance that he provided. But at the end of the day, he's like, look, it's your baby. So do what you think is best for your baby. And I am here to help with that. And so our doctor was fantastic. So we had this thing because her blood type is different than my blood type. So we found out after the fact that her blood was basically fighting my blood and was creating antibodies to kill my red blood cells. But ultimately, in doing that, it was killing her red blood cells too. And so her first night, I guess, in the hospital, she got to be in the room with us, which was another thing I was adamant on. I was like, unless there's something really wrong, like I don't want you taking her from me. Again, you hear too many horror stories.
Yep.
I'm like, I don't want her leaving the room unless there's something that I'm reasonable,
Emergency,
but
really.
right. And so she had to spend her first night in the room with us, but under this like blue light to help with her bilirubin levels. And so there was a bit of jaundice there. And so NICU nurses were involved in this process. And when the NICU nurses came in, that's where there was a bit of shame. Granted, they see some of the worst things, and they see babies who, oftentimes could be on the brink of death. And so they came in and they, so why did you defer the Hep B vaccine? I'm like, this is whatever she's dealing with right now has nothing to do with that. So why are you even asking me that?
And
Is that what you said?
Yeah, I'm like,
yeah, like Riley's not got Hep B, so why does she need it?
yeah.
And they were like, okay. And it's just like
They probably were surprised that you knew.
Well,
Yeah.
and
Like-
then she needed, because of this blood thing or whatever it was, she needed to have donor milk at the time, because the first few days before your milk supply comes in, you're just basically making colostrum, which again, my supply was fine. It's been fine. She was getting everything she needed. But because of where she was, she needed donor milk. And so I would have preferred her to have donor milk as opposed to formula, but I asked the nurse who came in and told me she needed donor milk. Again, this is the middle of the night. The next day after she had been born, she said, your baby needs donor milk. Are you okay with that? I said, well, yes, but like who are the donors, right? Because
Yeah.
I have been very particular about what I put in my body. How do I know the person that would be providing their milk, or in this kind of refrigerator that you guys have filled with milk? How do I know that that woman didn't have the COVID vaccine? And if that's the case, like, does that something that is pasteurized out? Like, I had all these questions for her, and she said, "I don't know. I've never had someone ask me that. Why don't you look it up and then let me know?" And I was like,
Yeah.
"It's not my
You're just
job
like,
to do that research." I was so shocked by that.
It's the Sage Steele Show. It's the Sage Steele